District Board of Directors meeting for February the 28th, 2022 will be brought to order. There was an executive session before this meeting starting at 5:45. Roll call, Mr. Enders.
Mr. Allen. Ms. Calhoun.
Here.
Ms. Stover.
Here.
Ms. Edwards.
Here. Here.
Campbell. Here. Ms. Crosby.
Here.
Ms. Stemler.
Here.
Mrs. Thomas.
Here.
8 members present.
Also, Dr. Omer is with us virtually. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Dady. Thanks.
So we currently have a couple from the middle school, so I'm going to let Mr. Valdez.
Good evening, board. Tonight we have two students from the middle school from the Healthy Hearts Club who are here to lead us in the pledge. They are Healthy Hearts Club led a fundraiser last week or the week before for Hoops for Heart and the American Cancer Society, or Heart Association, sorry. So these two were instrumental even at 6th grade in leading our building in that fundraiser. So we wanted to welcome them tonight. So we have Veda Alsamer and Jade Alexander who are going to lead us. Right in the middle. The floor is yours.
I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Valdez, I usually have to take pictures. This is very special since I'm going to give away my age. I was Veda's mom's teacher.
Oh.
That's just awesome. Come on in, Mr. Valdez. Should we join you?
Valdez.
All right, thank you, girls.
Next will be approval of the minutes for the board meeting of January the 10th, 2022 and January 24th, 2022. May I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Make sure your mics are on so the.
Come on, Wayne, get it. Turn your mic on.
Second.
I won't take it from you.
Did you get that, Mr. Enders? Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
None in favor, nay. Ayes have it. Next will be the treasurer's report of January 2022 and the investment report of January 2022. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor, nay. The ayes have it. Next is the approval of the bills. The bills total $2,890,695.60. May I have a motion?
I will. I'll second it.
Any question?
Just for clarification, board, it was a pretty normal month as far as bills come. Just for your reference, March 1st is our second payment for our debt. So that will come out tomorrow. So you will see that reflective in next month's bills.
No other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor, nay. Ayes have it. Dr. Omer, any communications?
Two things I want to point out that happened recently. I did put out a message to families on Friday that the CDC changed the mask order on transportation. That went out via one call. Also, then this morning, I received a notice that for the first time, and I can't even remember how long, Lycoming County is now not in high transmission of COVID. So that changes some of what the recommendations are in terms of how we handle our health and safety protocols, but that's the first time it's been that way in a long time. They do advise that we don't make any changes until it's 2 weeks in a row. So we're hoping for next week looking as good as last week. That's all.
Okay, nothing from the president's report, IU report, Jesse?
Yeah, we have, so we had discussed if, there was any kind of need for education for devices for younger students. And that's something that Dr. Omer would be interested in. He could contact Dr. Brooke Biter. I'm pretty sure you know her, Dr. Omer.
I do, and actually, Dr. Reed reached out to me about that conversation as well. So we are having that conversation.
Okay, good. So that way, when kids are younger and when they go up to the further grades, it's already a practice that we have good behavior and we know how to use our devices properly, which I thought that was really nice. And then I also, if there's any kind of special programming that we might need for any of our facilities, it's also something that we can contact the IU17 for, and they will do their level best to provide whatever it is that we need. So we just have to ask them. So it was a good meeting. And that's all.
Thank you. Anything from the student rep tonight?
Hello. I just have a few things here. This weekend, the Sadie's dance is coming up. There's lots of buzz in the school about it. People are excited. And there's actually a pickleball tournament on Thursday. Mr. Hess was kind enough to get that organized. Right now, Renaissance Club is decorating doors for the Olympics. It's just like each homeroom gets country. And I don't know, it's just something to do. The kids love it. I wanted to ask about the parking situation at the high school because actually today I was called down because I was in a teacher spot. Little did I know. And I mean, I only started parking there because my spot would get stolen every day. So, I mean, it's like a fight every day with all these kids. So, I mean, we need something to change there, like assign parking spots or something. I'm not sure what we could plan there, but it is an issue. There's people arguing about spots being taken every day. But is there an update on the situation at the middle school with the kids standing outside? Is there a plan for that? And if not, who can I talk to about it?
Well, you can start with your principal.
Go ahead. I will say my update is that I did have that conversation with Mr. Valduz. We've heard that concern before. It's something that we will have to look at in terms of start times as we move into the fall of the next year and see if there's changes we can make with staffing. Right now, our biggest issue is there are not staff there in the morning to supervise students until we open the building, and that's part of what you're experiencing.
Okay. As long as there's a plan, something going on.
Working on it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know it wouldn't be right away, but thank you guys.
Okay, next is the superintendent's report.
I'm going to start by referring to Dr. Dady to discuss the fob system.
All right, so I'm gonna mirror up here. I'm gonna go ahead and do that from here. That's all right. I think the mic's picking me up. Yeah, all right. So we're gonna be talking about the access points, and just so everyone's aware, the access points would be the points in which we use our fobs to unlock a door to get into the building. We don't issue exterior keys anymore. We use the fobs to get in. So part of the need of this is due to the age of the system. We do have some components that are in need of repair right now. The difficulty in tracking. So when we need to see who has fobbed into a door, we typically have to print off a report, match the report numbers to the fob, match the fob to who was issued the fob, and it's a pretty tedious process. It's nothing that the principals, for example, even have access to do on their own. Upgrades are needed to the current system, which would cost in excess of $25,000 right now, which is it's about $12,000 per panel that we need to replace currently. And that's on top of other situations that we would need to take care of. We've not received the best service through our current vendor, which is another reason we looked at, all right, well, considering the age of the system, and the system was put in over multiple years, what would it cost to upgrade the entire system, similar to some of the difficulties we were having with cameras in the camera system, that they were put in at various times. And as we started paying yearly fees and yearly repairs, what becomes that break-even point in regards to when can we, when does it become more efficient and cost-effective to replace the system rather than to keep repairing what we have. So here's the current costs to replace our existing system by building. So Avis's looks high compared to some of like Saldersburg, which is a similar sized building, but that is because we'd be adding additional fob points for that building, and again, some of that would be for security reasons. And the other larger buildings are much more comparable. We'd be adding a fob point to the maintenance garage. Currently, that does not have one. And then the administration building, we'd be putting one in the back of the building and replacing the other existing ones. And then at the server room, that price is actually incorrect because they had priced putting one at each server door, and since there's a door that goes in between, that actually can be reduced from somewhere between $2,000 to $3,000 because it's not actually needed at both entrances. We would choose an entrance, the technology would choose an entrance that they felt would be the most appropriate one to put it in, and then they could use the go-between door that's already in the room to access the other room if needed. So those are the costs. The benefits of doing this would be the system would be completely updated over the summer, so it wouldn't cause any sort of disruption to the functioning of our daily routine. And it's tied into our current camera system, so that's something, again, that we don't currently have. Each fob access point can be tied to specific cameras. So when we looked into who fobbed in this entrance, much easier for the principals because it's on one platform. So they'd be able to go to a different tab. Instead, there'd be a tab that says cameras, there'd be a tab that says access points. They'd be able to go to the access points, choose the access points, and it would bring up the cameras tied to it. And they'd be able to see exactly what happened with things like tailgating, if someone came in that wasn't supposed to, or during a time period that they set that they want to be notified if someone came in off of hours or between midnight and 5 or anything like that, it would send out an alert. The Verkada platform is used to control both systems. Remote controlling of points is needed. So if Mr. Valdez, who gets to be picked on tonight since he's here, gets a phone call and someone needs to get in the building, but they forgot their fob, or the police department's there and they forgot their fob because they have one there as well, Mr. Valdez would actually be able to remotely from his phone through a secure app be able to unlock an entrance, an access point for them, and they'd be able to get into the building then. Cloud-based system, so that takes away the need of us having a server on site, and all the updates and stuff would happen automatically through that cloud-based system rather than Johnson Controls having to come here and update servers and the programs that we have here. And the warranty on the equipment being installed is 10 years, very similar to the camera system we got through Verkada. Everything is warranted that they're going to be installing for 10 years. So if an access point does go bad over that time, unplug it and send it back. They send us the new one and plug it back in. And licensing fees are paid for the 10 years. So the pricing that was shown on there, we currently pay about $6,000 a year for what we have, and that comes out to about $166 per access point per year. And the 10-year licensing, that comes out to about $159 per access point per year when you break it down so you can compare apples to apples. Right now we're on a yearly paying of Johnson Controls, and this pricing would actually cover us for the next 10 years. So I'm going to tell you the same thing that I said with the camera system. You need to keep that in mind. So at some point, maybe after the first 5 years, you want to start thinking about putting money aside, or even if you decide to do it earlier than that, so that you're prepared to pay those licensing fees or to upgrade the system, whatever is needed beyond that 10-year point. So you won't have that cost for 10 years unless you do a lease, which we'll be getting pricing for that of what the lease would cost, a 5-year lease would be. But just to keep in mind, just like with the cameras, so I'm reminding you about the cameras as well. When you get to that 5-year point, we're going to be talking about how do we want to start budgeting money aside to help pay for that when those licensing fees and stuff become a responsibility again on a yearly basis. You can renew for the 5 and 10 years like we do now, so that is a possibility. So potential future considerations, just so you're aware, in talking to the technology guys, and they're here tonight, they can speak up in regards to this if you have any questions for that. There are other things that Verkada supports and does that we're not looking to go to yet, but there are things that we started to look at. One of those is the alarm monitoring through Verkada. I actually had them get me pricing for that today. The issue is Simplex, who does our monitoring now? Eastern Security does our monitoring now, but they cover fire and burglar alarms. Currently, Verkada just does burglar alarms, so I don't think it makes sense to separate that yet. However, Chris Fox told me today that they are going into the other side of that. They're not there yet. Now, when they do, I think it'd be worthwhile to look into that, because again, it might be a cost saving, some more things we have bundled together under one platform. Another one is the guest system. Verkada has another, again, it'd be another tab on their dashboard that we could have down the road, that if we wanted to do, currently we have people sign in on a piece of paper and it's only as correct as what that says. And they actually have, we've looked at various different kinds of guest systems when they come in, where they can be checked if they're in any sort of like child abuse sites or child predator sites, and it would do all those searches for us. It would print out a badge. Their system seems to be very simple, and again, it ties into the current systems that we have with cameras and stuff, if they needed to be like followed, anything like that. But that's a potential down the road. Those would be things that we could potentially look for grants for. They have the same thing with environmental sensors. Now, some of that's done through Simplex now with our like coolers and stuff like that, right, Mark? It's possible that it could be done through here, but the other part of the environmental sensors that they do is like vape detectors and stuff like that, and noise detectors in bathrooms. The reason I bring up noise detectors is because that's how typically bullying is found out about in the bathroom. When someone makes a loud noise, anything like that, or if someone needs help in the bathroom, they would know just need to make a loud noise, and it would set off the sensor, and which alerts the principals. Did you want to say something, Pat?
Yeah, South Williamsport both have the vaping sensors on them. ask a student. My basketball team alone in South Windsor had 4 kids suspended for vaping in one moment in time.
Was that through Verkada?
Yes.
So I knew Williamsport had gone through the access points with Verkada. So it sounds like some of the other districts have some of the other aspects. Really happy with the customer service through Verkada as well, which is again something we've been lacking with Johnson Controls from my understanding from technology. And just been great company to work with. So as long as I will get this will be on the agenda the next board meeting for approval, but I'll have included in that a 5-year lease option rather than completely paying for it up front. Any questions? All right.
So which one gets to go first? Middle school? Budget presentation, which you have at your seat. And you also have the PowerPoint in the back.
Oh, is it board or boardroom? Oh, pick the right one. All right. Good evening. Mr. Valdez, some board members I don't think I presented since you've been on the board, so I'm glad to be here tonight speaking on behalf of the middle school and speaking, I said to the middle school families, I'm not sure why there aren't more people here for a budget presentation. So be it. All right, so middle school budget, we're looking at the future year, the upcoming 2022-23. But we've just started, and we've been asked to start with the goals of this year and what we're currently working off of. And so I'll just touch on them quickly. This year, as a building, going off of the themes of the year for the district, we've really looked to, our goal number 1 is to increase systematic collaboration throughout the building in order to build our collective efficacy, which actually bringing up the IU earlier, a lot of partnership with the IU and Rebecca Gibney, who works there, and Dr. Biter. Collective efficacy, actually Mr. Armbruster and I presented with Rebecca Gibney on the idea of collective efficacy at the state conference. And really the nice thing about that is it doesn't take any budget funds. It's utilizing the team and the expertise of the teachers and the staff within the building, collaborating, increasing those emphasis. And we're doing that. You can't see it. It's in orange and black on there, but student success meeting, well, we're actually having standard meetings. We're focusing on some time to have specific meetings with our staff about standards, MTSS, which is dealing with students' behavior, academics, the whole picture of a student, having those data meetings, and then department meetings. Our goal number 2 is very similar, is the systematic collaboration, but this way it's the systematic approach. So when we have a building-wide initiative, making sure there's systems that are sustainable, that deal with Come Alive, data analysis, student supports, and then to do all that with meaningful professional development and curriculum review. And it says in there IU collaboration and iReady, dealing with equity. And so all of those things necessarily, like, we're really focusing on doing things in-house and shoring up some of our systems. And then the tagline at the bottom, I'm just gonna push this out because this is what we say at the middle school all the time: be at your best, make people around you better. If we can live at that level, and some days that best isn't as good as others, but if we can be at our best, make people around us better. If we ask you a question and the answer to that is no, you weren't at your best, then there's obviously an area we need to grow, and that's okay. But those are the goals for the middle school. I don't think they're probably gonna, I shouldn't say that. I don't know what they're gonna be next year. But those are the things, the premise that we do what we do at the middle school, and it's through that we develop the budget, and through those lenses that we develop the budget on. So moving into the budget, there's some major items that I want to bring to your attention. The first is new programs, and this goal originated in 2020 and 2021, and then going into this year, and that's to bring back some programs that have been lost. Family consumer science is required in the middle level, at least 1 year, and it hadn't been offered for 3. This is my 4th year in the middle school, and it was cut before I came. So we really pushed to bring that back, along with some tech ed and STEM initiatives. And so you'll see in the budget there's an increase. I need to talk about that in a future slide, because one of those, I'll talk about that in a future slide. But those are some 2 bigger items in the budget that have a lot of consumables. Like today, they were baking, and that's 3 classes that are baking, and it takes 4 days to get through every student, and they do it multiple times. So it's just a lot of consumables that we didn't have before, because we didn't have family consumer science. So those are some bigger items that are new. The ELA textbooks is consistent. It's been in our budget. It's Springboard is the resource we use. So it's roughly $15,000, and that's been consistent. It did drop into this year's budget. It did drop because we have a really large cohort that moved on to the middle school. But from the current year to the budgeted year we're talking about, it's pretty much consistent. The nurse, it did increase, and we'll get to that. It's not a huge expense, but it increased almost $1,000 from the year before. And then school-sponsored activities has a large budget always, and so there's a $6,000 line there, which we'll talk about, but that's just one of the bigger line items I wanted to bring to your attention up front. So we'll go through, and I just wanted to compare. We've been asked to compare year-to-year budget, and this is where it's a little tricky. The report Mr. Ender sent out, the budget report, reflects an $89,297 budget. So you'll see that right in the middle of the slide. But if you look back to 2 years, it was $85,000, 2021. This current year, it's $80,000, and that is with some funds that were going towards one of the new programs. But then in the year, when we had Heather Reeder transfer to the middle school for the tech ed position, some of the funds from the high school where she had budgeted, at this time last year, she budgeted money for the high school. But when she transferred, we were able to transfer some of those funds because that programming and the resources are now at the middle level for her program. So that $5,000 transfer has happened. So this current budget this year is with that transfer, it's $8,500.
Just to clarify that $5,000 transfer to the board, that was a transfer within the major function, 1100, and within the major object of 600s. It was simply a transfer from one building to the next building. So it does not need board approval. We do have a couple of budget transfers coming before the board here in a couple of weeks, but that one does not need board approval as it was just a transfer between the 2 buildings and had both the principals' approval to do that transfer.
So thank you, Mr. Ender. So if we could, I guess I'd like you to frame your lens that this current budgeting year was an $85,000, and then the budget that was proposed had 89, but I've since made a few additional cuts. And so next year's budget, we're looking at an 86,428. And so when I go through these comparisons in future slides, it's using that number. I just wanted to clarify, it's using the $86,426 number, which is roughly not roughly, it's $1,113 more than the year we're in right now. So to speak to some of those changes, the $1,113 increase, some of that, I'm just going through and highlighting anything that had a change from the current year to the year we're speaking of next year. The science equipment service, we're doing that every other year. So there's $750 we didn't do last year because the microscopes and the different things are only being serviced every other year. So that's in this year's budget. Contracted carriers, we did make a reduction of $2,000 by budget analysis, looking at field trips and what those costs are, what we're projecting, as well as looking at foundation grants and things, but we were able to reduce that by $2,000. The 1100-610, it's got those transfer in there. This current year, if you include that $5,000 transfer from the high school, was $26,000 roughly, and there is an increase. So if you look at, if you consider that transfer, there's an increase of $2,800. That increase comes from, and I have some notes here, math is projecting additional $600 more scientific calculators that they feel like they need. PE did request an additional $350 over this year because Come Alive and just different activities, they felt they needed a little bit more. Social studies had an increase of $550, and then family consumer science is a new program, but as Mrs. Flad builds the program, she came to me and said she thinks there could be used a little bit more, and that's for sewing. Because we're adding a new curriculum this year, everyone's getting a basic family consumer science because it's brand new to everyone. She wants to add sewing, and so there's increased needs for that. And then tech ed, there was an additional $400 there. So that $2,000 is split up between all departments. And then department books, there's a reduction there just based off different departments and their requests, not as much.
Mr. Valdez, can you go back?
Yeah.
Just for the board again to know, the science equipment that, as Mr. Valdez said, that's the, just general maintenance, collaboration of calibration. Thank you. Of our microscopes, but that, as Mr. Valdez said, it happens every other year, and the high school will have will also have a budget. They're going to come and do the entire district all at once. So.
Yeah, we asked the company. It is a local company. It's I think just a local company, and we asked them, would you rather come every year and do one building 1 year, and then that like middle school this year, high school next year, or would you rather come do the whole district at once, but only get paid every other year? And I believe they chose to do the whole district at once. But we wanted to honor, if it helped them to have us as a customer every year, we wanted to do that. But that's why it became a every other year model. Next changes, 1200-610 is special ed. General supplies, it's just been reduced. And then it's a little offset. They've requested a little bit more for curriculum inclusion support resources is where that's coming in. Our inclusion support teachers asked for a little bit more. And then library, it went up because of dues and fees went up $30. Through budget analysis and looking, felt like we could, in the office area, reduce our budget by $500. So we did that. Health services, this is the nurse. I can't speak, I'll be honest, I can't speak to this too much. We met, and then Mr. Enders met with the nurse, and that's consistent through all the buildings, that there needed to be an increase of that. I think there's another one of those words. I forget what that was.
The audiometer.
Audiometer, yes.
Audiometer.
Yeah.
So there, again, we talked last meeting about this. You're seeing it increased over the elementary building because the high school and middle school is going to get one. The elementaries are getting one. One's divided by 2, one's divided by 3. So
There you have it. And then we're going to 3200s, which is our student service or student activities fund. For the middle school, it's just music. That's who composes that area. And so this is a large area for our budget. And last year I spoke about sometimes it's hard to predict or estimate what funds are going to come from this area because we don't know if students are going to qualify for PMEA. We don't know if bands are going to be asked to travel to PMEA. And so it's hard to know how many students would qualify, if any are going to, maybe no one will go. So there's a lot of flex in this area, which makes it challenging, but we appreciate your understanding with that. I just last week, Mrs. Bauer said, I think she's looking to take 8 students to a regional choral concert that hasn't happened in the last couple of years. So I told her, yeah, like it's there, take them. But that always, there's some flex there. But overall in that area, we did make some changes, music repairs. I know they're going to make a push to have a lot of instruments repaired this year. So we did reduce that from this line. General music still has repairs in their budget, but for the school sponsored activities, there's going to be a reduction in repairs. There's supplies though. If you'll notice, we increased it 3,000, but it's really a shift. So we had been purchasing large instruments the last 2 years because the middle school had not purchased any new instruments in a number of years. So we had made some larger purchases. This year and that's what qualifies for that 752 line. This year, they asked to shift those funds to general supplies. They're going to purchase instruments, but they're smaller ones. And that's also where all the music comes from for choral concerts. So that 3,000 that was there is choral concerts, band concerts, their music repertoire, their general supplies. The additional 3,000 will be for some smaller instrument purchases that don't qualify for that new instrument line. So there was just a shift. It wasn't an increase or decrease. So finally, the goal for this current year was, and last year really, was to work toward a complete middle school program because we had made cuts and we hadn't been offering a complete program. We're doing that. We're offering family consumer science. We're offering tech ed that's involved with some STEM. And then next year, it's to continue that programming, continue to bring those offerings while updating data materials and supplies. So that's where we are. I'm striving to maintain a really similar budget, but it has increased by a little over $1,000. We'll continue to look at where we can kind of bring that down, but that was the goal, and I feel pretty good about where we are and the collaboration with the teachers. Any questions? If you do, technology's here, and there.
When you look at Mr. Valduce's budget to actual, I know we talked about this again at the last meeting. A lot of his variances from the 2021 actual into this budget and into this 2021 budget were just the field trips that we couldn't have. You'll see a large variance in the supplies, but as he explained today, that's because back then we didn't have a budget for family consumer science and tech ed, which now he does have funds in there for this year. So, which is kind of the reason for the variance and the increased need for that budget area.
Yeah, thank you. That is in next year's budget. And I'll to speak to that, family consumer science and tech ed were kind of one item because they weren't like, I've just been following that and tracking that with the teachers and they've been doing a great job. But next year we are really spreading it out so that it's the own department head will be speaking to their own budget and it'll be cleaner. And
Mr. Valduce explained, and you'll hear at the high school level too, PMEA is a real tough thing to budget. It's every year, COVID or non-COVID, whether or not you have to budget for the funds, but you don't know if you are going to have a kid going or not. And when they do go, you need those funds.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Patrick McCormick from the Technology Department. Most of you know me, I think. I've been here for a few years anyway. My budget actually is very close to what it was last year. Mine's not as pretty as Keith's is, but that's okay. We'll start with the bottom line first, and we'll kind of work backwards. So we had 824,000 was Budget for 21-22, and this year is 832. And I will show you where the approximately $8,700 is going, what we had to do there. But you'll notice the individual accounts, there was some shifting that was done. Actually, it's actually a good thing. First off, between Dr. Romer, Ben, Dr. Dady, we have managed to get our technology to a point where we are now in a good spot. We are. If you would have said we were be in this spot 3 years ago, not a chance. So COVID has been a good thing, and actually a good thing in this case. We've been able to bolster our student devices. We have a plan for the next 5 years to replace those. I know you've been working with Dr. Romer about budgetary reserve for technology going forward. That is absolutely critical. So we're not in a state where the budget's fluctuating up and down. It's consistent. So if you've looked at the past 3 years with me, it's been fairly consistent with or without the devices. We've gotten out of the leases. The middle school will be the last lease that we have, and that's a lease to own. Thank the Lord. All you have to do is be here for a lease to return. It is a nightmare. So I would never recommend going that route again. But lease to own, this will be the last one. So the middle school has 1 more year left on a lease, and they're off, and they'll be district-owned devices from that point forward. The other major component, and I know that Dr. Romer and Dr. Dady and Mr. Enders have been working with the board on this with the budgetary reserve, is to also maintain what I consider staples in the classroom. One of those being the Promethean boards. If you've ever done a walkthrough, especially, not that it's not true at the middle school or high school, but especially at the elementary schools, you will see that their Promethean boards they're ingrained in their curriculum. I mean, they can lose anything, but they better not lose their Promethean boards. Well, we had already set out on a plan as far as maintenance to use an expired lease. And I think I know he has been talking with you about reusing that to replace these older Promethean boards, which some of them are now more than 13 years old. So we have gotten our money's worth out of those. Mrs. Thomas, I think they were actually here long before you may have even been
Well,
at the
not
middle
long,
school.
but they were
They've been here a long time. So we've been able to fast track that a little bit because of COVID. So some of that you'll see a shifting in here in order to accommodate the replacement of the Promethean boards. And one of the things that the issue in December has exposed to us is the age of the boards, is the current version of operating system and software that are running will not interact too well with some of the boards. So we're having some issues with teachers and their Promethean boards, and so that is in the works. We are looking to replace that, and that's part of the major part of some of the changes here in the budget. So again, the major theme is the budget did go up 8,000. I'll show you where that is. But there's a lot of good things that come out here. So for the most part, we are consistent across the elementary schools with what we use. So Avis, Sal, and JSE, you'll see very much the same things. I think JSE may have a special ed software in there for a few more dollars, like $150 more than the other schools. But by and large, they're all the same, just maybe on a different ratio. And I do not believe we've added anything new in the elementary schools in terms of software. Not true. We have added iReady, but that is not new. This is the second year for iReady. And what that did is that displaced iExcel. So if you're in the classroom and used iExcel, iExcel has been phased out in the elementary schools and iReady has come in. So if you see in your budget there, you'll see iExcel last year may have had an amount, and this year it's blanked out. That's because that one's been replaced by iReady. Now at the high school, we do not have iReady, so they are continuing with the iExcel. And I'm waiting final pricing for that. So that's another thing with software. Usually they don't release many of their price increases until May. So I usually plan on 3-4% increase in software fees and then get nasty if they go higher. And so far they've been pretty good. I mean, we haven't had too many dramatic increases with 2 exceptions, and I'll talk about those. So software and all the
Pat,
11. I'm sorry,
I
Dr.
just
Omer, go
want to
ahead.
point out that iReady, even though iExcel is coming out and iReady isn't really going in his budget because we are using ESSER funds for that.
Thank you. Good point. Thank you for that. That's probably why it's not in here. Never mind. Thank you for catching that, Dr. Omer. I saw your head over there and I was like, oh. The other item, before I forget about it, I know there's one Ed puzzle, which was a really big deal during COVID. It still is, actually. I had budgeted that for the middle school and the elementary schools for 3 years. It's a 3-year prepaid that Ben has set up for me. And the foundation, it was just miscommunication. The foundation was going to cover the high school for the 3 years, and I think she thought that was the value. Turned out to be not overly expensive, and I was able to cover that remainder for the next 2 years for the high school. That's an integral part of what they do with videos to interject quizzes and interactive content in all their media. So they've done backflips over that we've been able to maintain that piece of software. If anybody asks me, I'm not necessarily want to add software because that's constant maintenance. So it has to be something that if we add it, it's coming from a curriculum person, it's coming from an office or an instructional person that this is a need, because software can be a gotcha sometimes. So everything we've done so far has been really good in terms of student development, student growth with software. So. Any questions with 1110 for the elementary schools? Again, things are pretty much the same. Yes, sir.
Places there, you had the digital projectors zeroed out and the Promethean boards in there. Is that because the Promethean boards won't need the projectors anymore?
Correct on 2 fronts. So Ben came to me and like I was going to say no to this. He asked if some of the items that we had continually put in there they could be used as supplies, because some of them actually are supply things. And so there's an overlap. It's a yes and a no. So yes, as we replace the older Promethean boards that have a projector, they will be replaced by panels very similar to that one. So the constant supply of the projectors will go away. Thank the Lord, because they are a maintenance item. Trying to keep on staff, and I understand it, to turn them off when they're done. We've gotten to the point where we don't replace bulbs very seldom because the bulbs are more than the projectors. So it's getting to that point. So as we go the next couple of years, those will all be replaced. So those items like the projectors, they'll be zeroed out. Thank you, Ken. Again, going through the 1110s for all the elementary schools are very much identical. And so, here is the item. It's 1110, 756. This one's at the high school. And there's some big numbers in here. I know that always scares people. So the 140,000 from last year that is now blanked out, along with 60 and 38. Slide over here. Those were all results as of expired leases. So the $140,000 was last year's iPads. Yes, last year's. So I believe the plan was, in working with Ben and Dr. Omer and Dr. Dady, was to start moving some of those items to budgetary reserve and for maintenance of critical things like the Promethean board and network infrastructures. So those have been moved or reallocated, I believe, whatever the terminology is there, Ben, to budgetary reserve or in for maintenance of our Promethean boards.
We moved, you scroll down, Pat.
Yep.
Those line items got zeroed out, and if you go to the very, 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 very end of the budget,
Where it's the 5,900.
we put a budgetary reserve amount in there for future technology purchase of $117,200.
Which is right
So
there.
what this will be a non cash line item that will roll into your fund balance at the end of the next fiscal year. We want to keep in their budget, to keep the budget consistent and keep budgeted funds to purchase technology equipment. And then when 3 or 4 years after ESSER goes away, and we tell you we have to buy $500,000 of iPads, you have saved that money up over time to take it.
I detest the or I detect the question.
Would you identify that specifically?
As a committed fund balance?
Yes.
I've been thinking about that.
Okay.
I'm getting a little concerned because we have a lot of committed fund balance. And what I'm trying to do, I really like to get some of them off the books. Obviously, some of them are in our hands and some of them aren't. When that PlanCon commitment comes off, then I would definitely look into doing one. But I'd really like to get some of these committed fund balances off the books.
Thank you.
first.
Thank you, Ben.
Mhm.
I sure didn't know that one. All I know is I went technology in the district long after I'm gone, and this is a good plan so far. And we're actually in a very good spot. I hope we can just keep maintaining that now. Okay, going back. Sorry again, I apologize. Mine is not as nice as Mr. Veldhuis, but. Okay. Any questions so far? One of the items that is always a question mark are two different things. One is our content filtering. 3 years ago, we had to switch content filtering because the cost of it went up 27%. A chunk of change. We were already paying $20,000, and do the math on that one. So we had to switch to a different provider, and boy, that killed us the following year. We missed some things and broke 1,200 iPads in 5 seconds. So we try not to change content filtering because it is pretty integrated in what we do. However, there's always a variable, and they got you. So if they raise, we always have our eye on the next place we can jump. But content filtering is scary, and I never know the pricing. We do get our pricing through the IU through consortium pricing, but they've also jumped ship from one vendor to another because of cost increases. So that's one I always keep in the back of my head. The other one is item 6 under technology. And it would be the Jamf iPad management system at $22,000. I know the person who manages that sitting in the room right now, so if I told him we were leaving that, he probably would get up and cry and leave now. That software is actually absolutely phenomenal in managing 2,200 plus iPads. But again, they are kind of a niche product and a very much a specialized product. And I can't say they write their own increases when they want to, but they have many people over the barrel when it comes to pricing. So they haven't been too slobbish. Where one year they had a little bit of a price jump, but the price is somewhere around $7.50 a license. So they've been pretty stable with that. So, but that's always an unknown. So I budgeted that one a little higher than I did last year.
Pat,
Yes.
it would be the screen probably before that one, because that's the 2220,
Okay.
the 438 down there.
438. Gotcha.
Yeah, the repair and maintenance. So you don't anticipate like those things going up at all with the way they?
No, that's I can't say it's a catch. We still have a large number of laptops. They come with a 1-year warranty. However, we maintain all of our, not the iPads, but all of the laptops, and we don't have many desktops remaining, but we cover them ourselves. So all the parts and things like that, we can actually fix and repair on site for those. So that's almost like a supply, and that's one of the items Ben came over to me and said, hey, can we consolidate some of those more into supplies, because it does give us a little more latitude to what we can purchase.
Okay, that's good.
Hopefully that makes sense.
Right.
I know one of the things that we got caught on, we never thought about it. We got teacher laptops. Very seldom does a laptop come with a DVD player anymore. Well, when we roll out 200 laptops to teachers and you're in elementary or middle school and you don't have a DVD player, yeah. So we're purchasing external DVD ROMs for them to check out the library so they can use them. So that's kind of where that comes in sometimes.
Okay, thanks.
The two items that are fairly large increases would be the $7,100 and the $1,000 under the 2,200. The on-premise server multi-factor authentication. In technical terms, meaning post December 3rd, we have to beef up some security. I don't want to get into logistics of how that stuff works, but those are some of the items that we're doing to help with that process. If you have questions afterward, just let me know. I'd be glad to explain it. So those account for, that accounts for a large portion of the increase. The other item is, I know this has been a beast of burden probably since as long as I've been here, is the tracking of Act 48 hours, tracking of certifications, and just basically job requirements or job trainings that you need to have for your job. Nobody wants to draw that short straw to manage that. I know it's gone from Kathy Williams to Pam Copenhaver to Gay to even they kind of tried to get it to me. No, had nothing to do with that. So they've discovered that with the piece of software we're already using, PAETEP, which is use now. Dr. Dave, you can elaborate on PAETEP. You know a little more about that than I do.
Specifically put, it's our evaluation software, but the company also works with Comply. And similar to the way I talked about the camera system and the access points, how there's different tabs for the platforms, but it falls under one platform altogether. Comply is an add-on that we could use with PAETEP, and it does all the tracking of all those things. Pat prepares an upload initially of the people and when things are due, and once it's uploaded, instead of Pam having to remind people about clearances and having to track clearances through an Excel document and trying to figure out, because in all honesty, things get missed at times. This automatically tracks it, so an administrator could look up who's due but it also warns us. It warns them, sends them emails when they're 6 months out, when they're 2 months out, when they're out of compliance. And once it gets to a certain point where it's like critical mode, 2 months out, for example, it starts sending the email to the administrator of that teacher as well to let them know, hey, you have a teacher that's about to be out of compliance with this and that. But it also tracks Act 48. So it makes it much easier when we do an Act 48 compliant training that automatically upload all those hours. And there's also we can make other things that like we have our employee handbook they have to sign off on every year. So you can add things in there that requires them to sign off on and acknowledge. And again, it does all the reminding, and then the administrator just goes in and sees, is everybody done? Or is anyone out of compliance? So that's a very simple version of it.
Put that in perspective, I know there's a neighboring school district that they have a person for this dedicated, and they run into compliancy issues because they just miss things. So this is definitely a step forward in getting that is kind of a daunting challenge to keep track of all that. All you have to do is go to a training where there's 200 teachers at one time filling out those Act 48 sheets. Somebody has to enter them. So a change for the better, a decrease would be in 2,600, 2,620 actually, 538. This is one that Ben and I get a chuckle over. Well, now we do anyway. This would be the pole rental fees. So you've seen a nice little decrease there. That is finally writing off the fiber optic cable to Nipponos. Finally. I'm going to say hopefully finally anyway. Anyhow, it's off. The Nipponos is off the books. So other than that, other than some some anticipated software minor increases. Like I said, I budget for 2 or 3%. It's pretty much stable. Again, we're in a good place with the devices we have for students, staff, Promethean boards, the maintenance of those and maintenance going forward, network infrastructure. We're able to make some gains with access points and things like that because of COVID.
Those access points are different.
I was just going to say that when Dr. Dady contacted me several times about the Verkada access points. We're speaking to totally different items. So you'll see in some other documentation I've given to the board about access points. The networking term for access points is that little device up there that's allowing you to have Wi-Fi access. His access points are in the doors that release a door. So same two words, two totally different meanings. But that is correct. Every time he says that, what are you talking about, Ken? I think it's the first.
I do plan on giving the board an update on the budget the next meeting where we are. We have some more retirements this evening, so they'll be reflected in your budget. Also, we do have health insurance rates for next year. They've been approved by the insurance consortium. That is a 2.5% increase, but is less than what was originally projected. So that is a positive. But there is an increase in health insurance for next year. But I will give you all an update on the status of the budget at the March 14th meeting.
Any questions for me?
Thank you.
And that's all of my report, Mrs. President.
Okay, next on the agenda is courtesy of the floor, and there is none for agenda items, so we'll continue to move on. Next agenda item is personnel. As was mentioned by Mr. Enders, we do have some retirements in tonight, and that is Scott Viro, social studies teacher, Andrea Bowers, music teacher, Cindy Ferguson, speech teacher, William Ferguson, science teacher. We also have a number of coaches. We have 2 assistant coaches being hired for baseball. Eda I in this is hiring of assistant coaches, volunteer coaches, and the spring coach stipend list. Now on the spring coach stipend list, for some reason, the one coach that we're hiring tonight got left off. It needs to be added. That is Brandon Ravella needs to be added to the stipend list, which would be the same as Adam Hook, which is level 1, and be the same thing. So that is to be added to the stipend list. We have a special ed paraprofessional, and we have a couple cafeteria staff that we're hiring. Any questions?
The deadline for retirements is, if I recall, is March 1 or today or tomorrow?
For the
That
for
is
the
correct.
professional staff.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Are these kitchen staff and are they new hires?
One is a promotion and one is a former employee that's returning back.
Any other questions? May I have a motion?
So moved.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Not having any say nay, not agreeing say nay. Ayes have it. Next, we have curriculum and instructions. There is nothing on that agenda item and nothing on building and ground. So moving into letter H for finance. We have the settlement of the 2021 interim real estate taxes, and we have the settlement of the 2021 real estate taxes. Can you give us just a one or two liner on what the difference, what that means, Ben?
The difference between interim and regular? That's like a whole degree. And so here's a simplistic way to say it. When you go to build something, you need to get a builder's permit. That triggers an interim real estate tax bill. So it's an increase in your taxes through like an addition on your house. You'll get billed. The county issues these bills twice a year. So it depends on where the construction phase is. Since I'm talking, I'll just keep going. Taxes, we've been about consistent the past couple of years. Slight uptick in the payment of our taxes. That's what you're approving now. This is the process by which we will turn these taxes over to the county as delinquent, and the county will start collecting them for us. But we're pretty much being consistent with a slight increase in our collection percentage. That's what we always keep an eye on back in the office.
Good. Questions? Oh, can I have a motion?
Motion.
I'll second.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor say nay. Ayes have it. Moving on to miscellaneous. We have a donation for Mop Pop for Dr. Jennifer McKee's Learning Support Classroom. We have a donation for the CTE manufacturing welding classes from American Welding and Gas. Now it says of damaged cans and stock from them. Basically what happens is they come in cartons. If one of the cans is damaged, they get rid of the whole thing. So as the high school, they will have parts of that they can continue to use. So they're donating that to the school. And then we have the National Federation of High School Broadcast Program agreement for 4 units, meaning that's 4 cameras. The cameras to be installed at the high school gym, the middle school gym, football stadium, soccer track field stadiums, and that is the 5-year agreement. The cost is $3,500, but that's a one-time fee. Then we have some policies as our second read. Any question, or may I have a motion? Any questions?
I did have a question. Did somebody second though? I didn't hear.
Oh, I don't know.
I'll second.
On that broadcast program agreement, I mean, I think there was a thing there like with the advertising and things like that they could get, that we could get money for or whatever, basically. So, I mean, should we set up like a committee or something to look at that advertising policy that we have?
We will need to do that. If you want, we can do it tonight if you want, or we can wait till the next meeting and.
We can wait till the
Once
next
we get
meeting,
this
but I-
solidified, then we can make the
Right,
committee.
yeah, but I would like to see us to review that policy.
Because presently, the way the policy is written and what I think prohibits us from doing this. So we have to look at what it is that prohibits us from doing that and check that out. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor, nay. Ayes have it. Nothing under old business. The next thing we have is courtesy of the floor for items that are not on the agenda. Seeing none, we will move on. We will have an executive session to talk about personnel. And after that session, there will be no additional items, so we will go ahead and adjourn this meeting. May I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion.
So we will now go into executive session and this meeting is adjourned.
Mr. Wall, you could have